Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight. Welcome you to this week's Talking News. This week's The Isle of Wight has been going mad. At the Thursday Mix and Mingle group when Sheila, Sylvia, Margaret and Doreen were our line and house winners. Well done, ladies. We are delighted to see even more people at our Wednesday coffee morning enjoying cake and a chat. Our weekly meetings are open to anyone and everyone, whether you are someone living with or someone affected by sight loss. In our activities section, Susan covers all of the things that we have on offer, including knitting groups, golf, swimming, coffee mornings, lunch club and low vision drop-in days. Hopefully everybody is now aware of our Members' Day planned for the 11th of September here at Millbrook House from 10:30 to 3:30. Please feel free to drop in at any time and meet the 10 other organisations who will be attending and enjoy one of our succulent burgers or sausages. The people attending include the RNIB, Guide Dogs, Optilec, Vision Aid, People Matter, the Sensory Support Team, the Macular Society, Blind Veterans, Touchpoint Vision and Isle Access. Please call the office on 522205 to book your place. This is a great chance to view an entire range of low vision equipment, including digital aids, technology, telephones, and to meet people who can help support in every aspect of daily living, including mobility, changes to your home, counselling and so much more. Please, everybody stay safe and we look forward to seeing you on the 11th. Lisa.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Wootton welcomes temporary return of post office. A post office is returning to Wootton, albeit temporarily and only for one day a week. The village has been without one since the High Street branch closed in November 2020. From Wednesday, services will be restored thanks to an outreach hub. The postmaster from God's Hill Post Office has agreed to host the service, which will be based at the Parish Council office on Brannan Way every Wednesday between 9:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. Graham Brander, Post Office Network Provision Lead, said, "We are delighted to be restoring post office service to Wootton Bridge, and we know how important a post office is to a community. We thank the Postmaster for God's Hill for providing this service." The hosted outreach will be operated from Parish Council Office 5 Joanne's Walk, Brannan Way, Wootton Bridge, PO 334NX.
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Fake emails from the NHS about COVID passport among recent scams. Fake emails from HMRC, the NHS and TV Insurance are among scams that are circulating on the Isle of Wight. Trading Standards says residents have reported scams from the following: a call from someone claiming to be from TV Insurance, stating that their insurance had expired and it needed to be renewed. They claimed the resident owed £180, but they didn't have any insurance and had recently changed their television. The caller then insisted that they needed to pay, and they couldn't pay in instalments. They went as far as to demand they use a credit card, go overdrawn or borrow money from a friend. Luckily, the resident reported this to a trusted contact who confirmed that this was definitely a scam. Reports of callers ringing residents to say that they want to check their meters, implying they are from SSE. On checking the number online, there are large numbers of complaints about it. If in doubt, check with SSE to confirm if the call is genuine. Action Fraud has received over 700 reports from members of the public about fake emails purporting to be from the NHS. The emails claim to be able to provide people with a digital passport that proves you have been vaccinated against COVID-19. These emails are fake, and the links within them lead to genuine-looking websites that steal your personal and financial information. Remember, the vaccine is free of charge. At no point will you be asked to pay. Emails have been received purporting to be from HMRC, stating, "If you do not reply to this email with the details required, you will not be eligible for any refunds from HMRC." This is a scam, and legitimate organisations will never contact you in this way. You can check if a phone number is a scam. Put the number that called you into Google and select the website who-called.co.uk. This will tell you if the number is definitely or likely to be a scam, and quite often others who have received it will comment on their experience. Reporting a scam. For advice on scams, call Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline 0808 250 5050. To report a scam, call Action Fraud 0300 123 2040.
Restraining order for resident found guilty of threatening, appalling, abusive behaviour. From On the Wight, read by Chris. After being handed the sentence, the resident who has tormented his local Isle of Wight councillor said, "That's fair enough." An East Cowes man who tormented his local Isle of Wight councillor has been handed a 12-month restraining order. Simon Paul Wheeler of Albany Road was sentenced at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court today, Monday, after he was found guilty of using threatening, abusive and insulting words with intent to cause fear of unlawful violence towards Councillor Carl Love. Holding a wooden pole and calling Councillor Love expletives to a passerby and saying, "I'm going to have some fun," Wheeler stepped into the path of the councillor, who was driving his tuk-tuk through East Cowes. The case went to trial in July after Wheeler pleaded not guilty to the unprovoked attack, but magistrates said he had provided a catalogue of lies and deceit, and his evidence was less credible than Councillor Love's. The incident happened in April, and during the trial, Councillor Love said he feared he was going to be hit with the pole. Speaking at the sentencing, James Cameron, defending, said Wheeler did not accept the conviction, but having gone through the grounds of conviction with him, he did not think there were any grounds to reject it. Mr. Cameron said while Wheeler accepted what he did and he made a bad decision, he incorrectly thought it would be seen as a joke. He said he has not dealt with this situation very well, and because of that, he has caused fear to the other person. Suffering with bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder and blackouts, Mr. Cameron said he had advised Wheeler to see his doctor as it was a bizarre offence and out of the ordinary. Having read the pre-sentencing report, Magistrate Keith Jones said, "You indicated that it was all a bit of a laugh at the time, but it wasn't, was it? It was very offensive what you were doing." Mr. Jones said it was very threatening and appalling, abusive behaviour towards Councillor Love, who was only going about his business, while also offensive to all those present. The restraining order told Wheeler to have no contact, direct or indirectly, with Councillor Love, and to not go to Old Road, East Cowes. When handed the sentence, Wheeler, who has 2 previous convictions, said, "That's fair enough." He was also fined £300, ordered to pay a surcharge of £34 and prosecution costs of £680.
Nationwide's cards, certified by Royal National Institute of Blind People. Iona. Nationwide Building Society has begun issuing dot and notch embossed and recycled bank cards that are certified by the Royal National Institute of Blind People. The cards are the first to carry the RNIB's tried and tested logo. The dot feature will enable members to distinguish between credit and debit cards, while the notch tells them which way around the card needs to be inserted into card machines and ATMs. The cards, which are made from 85% recycled plastic, will be issued to all members, making them the rule rather than the exception. Nationwide's ATMs already have audio functionality that can read out the information on screen to help guide those with sight loss. David Clark, Director of Services, RNIB, says simple changes to bank cards can make the world of difference to those with sight loss, and we congratulate Nationwide on taking these steps to make banking a more inclusive and accessible experience for their blind and partially sighted customers.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Police and Crime Commissioner comments on Hampshire's approach to firearms licensing. In the wake of this month's tragic firearms incident in Plymouth, which resulted in 6 deaths, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight has moved to reassure local residents about Hampshire's approach to firearms licensing. It has been reported in the national media that Jake Davison was handed back his licence and firearm, despite clearly displaying some serious mental health concerns. Donna Jones, PCC for Hampshire and Isle of Wight, has said, "Following the tragic incident in Plymouth, my thoughts remain with the families of those who died and the police officers who were first on the scene. This cannot and must not happen again." Hampshire Constabulary require a GP reference to be included when firearms licences are made, before or issuing or processing gun licences. Previously, when GP references were requested after an application was processed, very few GPs responded. The point of the reference is to assess a person's suitability to own a firearm and enable any mental health issues to be considered. Furthermore, if someone in possession of a firearm licence seeks help and support from their GP for any mental health related issue, their GP is obliged to report the mental health issue to Hampshire Constabulary's Firearms Unit for revocation of the licence. By insisting on a GP reference at the point of application, Hampshire Constabulary has built in an additional layer of protection for the public.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Isle of Wight's power supplies boosted by £1 million investment. Homes and businesses on the Isle of Wight are to benefit from a £1 million project by Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks, SSEN. Distribution to upgrade and replace part of the island's power network. The substantial programme of works in the Wootton Common area of the island is already underway and will boost power supplies for over 3,400 customers who live and work in the area. Running until the end of October 2021, the 16-week-long project will include the complete refurbishment of 2 132 kilovolts transformers on the area's network, along with the replacement of 2 33 kilovolts circuit breakers and the upgrade of all the local associated network protection systems. It comes following an apparent increase in the number of power cuts happening across the island in recent months and years. In addition to the upgrade of the infrastructure, SSEN will decommission an oil storage tank and associated equipment no longer in use at the Wootton Common substation, clearing the site and removing any materials that are no longer required or can be reused from the island. These works will not only boost the resilience and the strength of the existing island network, but will provide a more modern and efficient infrastructure for SSEN's Isle of Wight customers as they adopt low carbon technologies such as electric vehicles. Network reliability is a key priority for SSEN and the communities it serves, and the distribution operator has planned this substantial upgrade to maintain a robust infrastructure for customers' changing demands. SSEN's project manager, Tim Eccleston, said, "My team and I at SSEN are delighted to be working on this project that will see a £1 million investment in the infrastructure located in the Wootton Common area of Ryde. These works will considerably boost the resilience of the power supplies for over 3,400 customers living and working locally, strengthening the network against adverse weather conditions and building an infrastructure that meets our customers' needs now and into the future. The project will be carried out with the least possible disruption to our customers. The upgrade to the infrastructure will be contained within the footprint of the substation site, and I'd like to reassure our customers that there are no planned supply interruptions for the duration of the project. SSEN's investment on the Isle of Wight will help ensure a power supply that suits the needs of residents and business owners now and for years to come. SSEN is undertaking these works following consultation with stakeholders and in line with its commitment to listen to the requirements of its customers, ensuring they have a supply and network that's fit for purpose."
Lapsed plans for onshore tidal energy substation revised and resubmitted from On the Wight, read by Chris. Planning permission has lapsed for the onshore tidal energy substation at Flowersbrook, so new plans have been submitted. The production of tidal energy on the Isle of Wight could be a step closer as plans have been submitted again to build a substation in Ventnor. Permission was previously granted in 2015 for the onshore elements of the Perpetuous Tidal Energy Centre, PTEC, to be built at Flowersbrook, Steep Hill Road. However, due to delays in changes to government policy and funding challenges, the planning permission lapsed. PTEC still holds the offshore consents needed for the project, granted by the Marine Management Organisation, so it is just the planning permission which is needed to build the onshore infrastructure before the project can begin. With renewed government support for tidal stream power, PTEC is now seeking consent for a substation control room, outdoor transformer compound, welfare facilities, cable installation and the possible use of horizontal directional drilling, but in a different layout. Previously, the buildings were going to be built on land owned by the Red Squirrel Trust, but a reconfiguration at Flowersbrook will see the facilities built on southern waterland instead. The water company has confirmed its support of the project in a letter to the Isle of Wight Council's planning department, with Mark Johnson, its property asset manager, saying they look forward to seeing the exciting project come to fruition. Planning documents say if permission is granted, they plan to start construction from 2023 and be operational by 2025. They also say the design of the substation has been designed with landscaping, visual appearance and noise in mind. It has looked at sympathetic planning options like turf roofing to reduce the visual impact, with cables connecting to the substation underground, which will not be visible. The state-of-the-art tidal turbines will be placed 2.5 kilometres south of St Catherine's Point and nearly 6 kilometres from Ventnor. The PTEC project will have the capacity to produce 30 megawatts of clean, renewable energy, which is enough to power 15,000 homes. At the start of the project, the Isle of Wight Council loaned the company £1 million to help set it up and obtain licences, but later turned down loaning it a further £244,000 to help it secure further funding. The authority also agreed to selling up to 2/3 of its shares and stepping down from the PTEC board. In a survey conducted before officially submitting the application, PTEC found of the people that responded, 87% supported the development of renewable energy and 77% considered tidal energy to be an important future source of green energy. However, only 55% of respondents supported the PTEC project, with concerns raised about the potential impact on marine life and the fishing industry. To view the planning application, 21/01623/FUL. You can visit the Council's planning register. Comments will be accepted until the 27th of September.
Plans for 150 new homes heads to Isle of Wight Council Planning Committee from On the Wight, Iona. Plans for nearly 150 homes on greenfields in Gunville are a step closer, bridging the gap between already permitted developments. 2 applications, one for outline permission for 113 dwellings and the other for full permission for 36, are heading to the Isle of Wight Council's Planning Committee next week, with conditional approval being sought. The hybrid application is said to be Phase 1 of the development, which was submitted by DN Associates. The properties will be built on land behind Arthur Moody Drive and Forest Hills and sandwiched between developments of 100 dwellings to the north off Ash Lane and 22 to the south on Alvington Manor View. If the applications were approved, it could see 271 further houses extending Gunville. Of the 149 properties being considered, it's proposed 35%, roughly 52 homes, would be affordable. The outline permission is only seeking matters of access and landscaping considered now, with appearance, layout and scale reserved for later consideration. The Isle of Wight Council is under the presumption in favour of sustainable development due to the council failing to meet the government housing targets, unless there's an impact that would significantly or demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and as such, the development has been recommended for conditional permission. The applications would be subject to 18 and 12 conditions respectively, with the outline proposals having the fewer conditions. In the report supplied by the Council's planning officers, they said the proposed development would provide much needed housing with an area of land with existing residential development on 3 sides, minimising the impact of the character on the area. Between both applications, 147 objections have been submitted from residents, MP Bob Seeley and Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council, citing highways, safety issues, flood risks and lack of privacy among their comments. With the increased vehicle traffic, residents were concerned it would cause traffic issues around Gunville and into Carisbrooke. Planning officers said the wider scheme would have some impact on the highway network, notably queuing at the Waverley roundabout at the top of Carisbrooke High Street at peak times, but provision of housing would outweigh this impact. Along with the housing, the development would, by a section of 106 legal agreement, also extend the public right-of-way, forming part of the West Wight cycle track and secure contributions of £50,000 towards sustainable transport. The Planning Committee will discuss the application on Tuesday as it's a major development, but it was also called in by former Carisbrooke and Gunville councillor John Hobart. Current councillor Joe Lever, who won the seat in the May elections, also objected to the application.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Newport's The Castle Inn broken into overnight. The Castle Inn pub in Newport has been broken into overnight. It's alleged that the premises was breached sometime between 11:30 p.m. on Monday night and 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday. Some damage has been caused inside the pub, according to the pub's owners, along with cash and spirits being taken. CCTV footage is being reviewed. The owners have told Isle of Wight Radio they are heartbroken. Landlord Simon Cant told Isle of Wight Radio, We are heartbroken and gutted. We've worked so hard to keep this little family running, especially after all we've been through with the pandemic. We've looked closely and it appears that cash and alcohol has been stolen. We feel sorry for our staff because it will impact on all of us. This just makes a hard year even worse. If anyone has information, then please let us know so we can locate the person who has done this. Posting on Facebook, the Castle Inn said, "We're absolutely heartbroken to report that overnight we've been broken into. Our staff are safe and nothing appears to have been taken. Thankfully, we have CCTV and we'll be looking through all of this in great detail in the morning. We have suffered considerable damage to our function room, in which most of you know we've only very recently had refurbished. That damage is minimal in comparison to what could have been, but as a small family-run business, this is a setback we can't afford, so we'd like to find out who needs to be held accountable for the damages. Any help anyone can give would be greatly appreciated. Did anyone witness anything suspicious near the pub or in the areas surrounding between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m? If anyone has any information or thinks they saw or heard anything suspicious between these times, we urge you to please get in contact with us. As you can all imagine, this is absolutely devastating for us all to be greeted with. Due to this, I'm sure you'll understand that the pub may be open later than usual today."
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. 10 homes planned for site of former cattery in Wootton. New plans have been submitted to build houses on the site of a former popular cattery in Wootton. Under the plans submitted to the Isle of Wight, the now closed Reynard's cattery would be demolished, along with the existing house, to make way for 10 new houses and bungalows. Permission was previously granted for 8 homes on the Palmer's Road site in August 2019, but work has not yet been started as it was submitted as a speculative proposal. The permission does still have a year before the rights expire, but local developer Solent Homes has taken over the part Brown and part Greenfield site and looks to increase the number. In planning documents, agents Andrew Wight Planning Consultancy said the company's nearby Lushington Hill development is almost at completion, and because it has been so well received, it decided to purchase Reynard's. Planning agents say the addition of 2 extra homes is a further benefit, as it will mean a financial contribution towards affordable housing would be made. The 10 homes proposed would be split between houses and bungalows, with 2 two-bedroom and 8 three-bedroom properties. The planning agents say the scheme is an opportunity for a developer with a proven track record of developing high-quality homes to optimise the land. The site on Palmer's Road will be opposite part of the approved development of 40 dwellings at Palmer's Farm, which was granted in October 2019. Agents say they are mindful the dynamic of the surrounding area is subject to change, but are looking to strike a balance between optimising the full potential of the land while ensuring the density and layout would complement the area's character. You can view the plans on the Isle of Wight Council's planning register, and comments can be submitted until the 13th of September.
Prehistoric crocodile tooth found on Sandown Beach, from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Chris. A crocodile tooth, believed to be around 145 million years old, has been found on an Isle of Wight beach. Martin Brown and his two sons Jackson 9 and Bodie Warwick 6 made the discovery while fossil hunting in Sandown this morning, Wednesday. It is said to be their first ever fossil find. Intrigued as to what it could be, the boys took the fossil to Dinosaur Isle, where experts confirmed it was that of a crocodile tooth. The boys' mum, Cara Warwick, said they were told the tooth dates back to the Cretaceous period. It's believed to be between 145.5 and 65.5 million years old. It is not the first fossil to be found on the island. Back in February, brothers Luke and Joe Ferguson found a fossil believed to be from an elephant or mammoth. While a dinosaur footprint was uncovered on the foreshore at Yaverland in June, as Isle of Wight Radio reported.
Ryde interchange. Historic England calls for changes to proposals from On the Wight, Iona. Historic England have shared views on the Ryde interchange project and made some suggestions of how they believe it can be improved. A crucial investor in Ryde has said more could be done to improve the proposed £10 million transport interchange scheme. Historic England, which has invested £480,000 as part of the protective and regenerative High Street Heritage Action Zone, responded to the Isle of Wight Council's consultation on the proposals for Ryde Esplanade, recommending changes. It suggested replacing the turning circle at the bottom of Union Street with a four-way junction, widening the pavement on the South Street of the Esplanade to provide outdoor eating spaces for cafes, and reviewing the bus waiting spaces. It also suggested Whitelink's plans to regenerate the tramway pier into a pedestrian and cyclist pathway should be swapped with the main Ryde pier. It says cars should go up the currently down pier with pedestrians able to promenade on the main walkway. In a letter to David Newton, the project strategic manager, Historic England's advisor of South East, Robert Lloyd-Sweet, said it felt there were opportunities to improve the scheme which would directly affect the Ryde conservation area, a HE regional priority for action. Mr Lloyd-Sweet noted the current configuration of the Esplanade was not ideal, with the bus station and highways landscape making an indifferent to poor contribution to the conservation area. The scheme includes road junction changes, a new bus station layout, and South Western Railway is due to refurbish a train station. The bus station would be replaced with lay-bys, but Historic England has suggested moving them to create better sight lines of buildings on the Esplanade, widening the pedestrian crossing or moving the entrance to the pier approach road, reducing the loss of Western Gardens. It said the new public spaces would be unlikely to provide a useful space for leisure and would not replace lost space at Western Gardens. Mr Lloyd-Sweet said it was a significant opportunity to enhance the tramway pier, but the materials proposed for the deck, railways and shelter seats did not provide a high-quality design. It was recognised there are conflicts on the pier between vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists, but the tramway proposal removed the opportunity for pedestrians to take their time and sandwich them between trains and cars. Historic England said the benefits of this proposal were unconvincing and proposed the tramway pier be used for vehicles instead, retaining and enhancing the current pier for pedestrians. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson thanked Historic England for providing the feedback, but said it would be inappropriate to comment on individual consultation responses. A report based on the feedback is being prepared ahead of a meeting in September of the Cabinet, where a decision on implementing the scheme will be made. A spokesperson said a number of responses had been received.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. £700,000 needed from Parish Council to save village's only shop. A parish council must find more than £700,000 if it wants to take over a village amenity. One of the latest turns in the Chale Green Stores saga has seen Chale Parish Council, CPC, put forward as a potential bidder for the former shop, post office and flat. The store was closed in October 2019 following a lengthy battle between the parish council and the owner of the building, Vern Tyreman. The shop was unviable, according to Mr Tyreman, but the parish council was said to have the funding in place to buy the store before the asking price was raised, meaning the potential sale fell through. Earlier in the year, the store was made an asset of community value. An intention to market or dispose of the stores was received by the Isle of Wight Council in June. This means CPC has until December 28th to find £705,000 to buy the site and bring it back to community use. Planning permission was granted to turn the once village hotspot into 3 houses, despite 62 objections and concerns about common land and contaminated land being used. The parish has the choice of buying 1 or all 3 plots of Chale Green stores, with the most expensive original 1910 building and shop space costing £375,000. The second and third plots, consisting of the single-storey shop building costing £230,000 and the car park area with space and permission for a 3-bedroom cottage, up for £100,000. CPC has been discussing how to raise the funds for the purchase and how to utilise the space should it be successful. It is also asking Ward Councillor Claire Critchison to call in the decision of planning officers who granted planning permission, as it has issued with the contaminated land and unlawful use of common land for private gain. It says those points were not adequately addressed in the planning conditions, which only stipulates a study should be done to determine the previous use of the land, as it was once a petrol station, and the ground conditions are assessed before development can start. An informative notification was only issued on the matter of the common land, saying it should be investigated before any works commence. The parish council has also submitted a letter of complaint to the Isle of Wight Council's planning department about the decision. The owner of the store, Mr. Tyreman, was contacted for a comment on multiple issues but declined to respond, saying it was a private matter and that the facts were the facts, and if anyone delves further they would find them. Earlier this week, Mobile Fish and Chip Takeaway, the Jolly Friar, believed it had been stopped from serving on the land in the front of the shop. However, after posting on social media and gaining a large response, with Chale residents making it clear they were able to use the common land, the takeaway said it would be back next week.
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Bembridge Harbour. Council counting cost after failed judicial review. Isle of Wight Council taxpayers may have to foot a £6,000 bill for a failed bid for judicial review. The legal case against the council and applicants for housing and other facilities at Bembridge Harbour was thrown out of court, but the bid, which was lodged by Bembridge Harbour Trust, BHT, has been appealed. The judicial review bid was brought forward in April 2021, before the council elections, but now 2 BHT trustees, councillors Jonathan Bacon and Phil Jordan, sit on the council's cabinet. Both councillors, members of the Alliance Group, declined to comment on the impact the costs could have on the council's budget. A judge refused the judicial review, which was based on the harbour and its environment, last month, saying there were insufficient grounds to challenge the application. BHT was instructed to pay a portion of the costs incurred by the Isle of Wight Council and Bembridge Investment Limited, BIL. A council spokesman confirmed BHT was limited to a £10,000 costs cap, paying £5,796.50p of the authority's costs and £4,203.50p of BILs. The council's total costs amounted to £11,710, leaving it to pay £5,913.50p even though the application failed. The costs to the council will need to be met from the council's already stretched budget. Councillor Bacon said he would not be commenting at this stage, and with a declarable interest he needed to take advice from the council's monitoring officer, as he has done in previous situations concerning this issue. He said, in any event, the proceedings had not yet concluded and the situation may change, as a notice of appeal against the decision has been lodged. Councillor Jordan said he was very careful not to be involved in matters which could be considered a conflict of interest. He said since his election in May, he had declared any related interest at the Harbour Trust meetings and absented himself from decision-making in regard to the judicial review process. Therefore, he said, he could not comment from any personal knowledge on the procedure and process or financial implications. In an update to members, BHT said its council failed to convince the judge on a small number of important and environmental issues of concern. It said it still firmly believed the planning decision did not deliver the material benefit to the statutory harbour authority needed to justify an enabling development. It says the prospect of the judicial reviews has put pressure on the harbour authority to comply with legislation, and indicators of improved decisions have been seen with pile repairs and dredging taking place. Malcolm Thorpe, owner of the Harbour Authority and BIL, said they had been pressing ahead with the work anyway, and now the judicial review has been dismissed. It would allow the harbour to plan for future with positivity and confidence. A judicial review, a second one, at bid, has been launched, challenging the actions of the Harbour Authority, but a hearing date is yet to be set. Mr. Thorpe said the harbour will robustly defend its position against the second judicial review.
Ventnor Day, a huge success. Mayor thanks all involved, from On the Wight, Iona. The weather and new setting for Ventnor Day was perfect. All those who took part have been thanked by the Mayor. Ventnor's Town Mayor, Councillor Stephen Cockett, has thanked volunteers, participants and all those who popped along to the hugely successful Ventnor Day. This year, the event was held across Ventnor Park and the Putting Green, providing a fantastic green space with plenty of shade, which was needed for visitors to the event. Despite the misty start to the day, the sun soon burnt through the grey clouds, and by the time midday arrived, blue skies had emerged and Ventnor was treated to a very hot and sunny afternoon. The event was buzzing with activity as hundreds of people wandered through the park, finding out more about what the scores of community organisations had to offer, as well as supporting local artists and sellers who had set up stalls for the afternoon. The Town Council used the event as an information gathering exercise, asking residents to share their top 3 priorities for the town. These ranged from a focus on wildlife and green spaces to providing local jobs and youth services. The Town Council will be collating the responses and will let you know once the results are out, they say. Posting a note to Ventnor notice board over the weekend, Mayor Crockett said, "I want to say a huge thank you to the organisers, Tony McCarthy, At the Town Council tent, we had a number of interesting inquiries and suggestions about matters around the town. Please don't hesitate to email us with things or pop in and see us at the monthly surgery, Salisbury Gardens, first Wednesday of the month. Wishing you all a great time for the remainder of the summer.
Good morning, everybody. This is Madeline.
And this is Tressa.
And we're reading the second part of the Talking News. But before we start the second part of the county press, here is this week's Society's news. Coffee and Chat is on every Wednesday from 10 o'clock until 11:30, and it is only £1 to include the cake and coffee. Come along and spend time with members and staff discussing various topics. The Thursday Mix and Mingle is held every week, starting at 10:30 and finishing at 2 p.m. If you would like to come along, please call the office to book a space. The transport can be arranged if required. The theme this week is the circus. On Friday, the Striders will be meeting once again for an enjoyable stride around the Newchurch area, followed by lunch at the Pointers Inn in Newchurch.
The new swimming group will start on the 6th of September at Medina Leisure Centre between 1:30 and 2:30 p.m. Transport can be arranged. The cost is £5 plus £2.50 for transport. Please call the office to put your name down if you're interested. The new lunch club on Tuesday, September the 14th at the Hotel Ryde Castle. If you would like to come, please call the office and book a space. For more details, please don't hesitate to call the office, or to book your space, please call Susan on 522205. And finally, we would like to wish our long-standing Thursday lady, Ruby Cooper, a wonderful 100th birthday on Wednesday. Her friends at Mix and Mingle wish to send her their very best wishes on her very special day.
And moving on to some letters to the editor. And this is from Matthew Weaver in Newport. More medics required. Congratulations to all those obtaining A and A star grades in their exams. What a phenomenal achievement during these difficult times, and how gratifying that so many wish to pursue careers in medicine, particularly given our national shortage of doctors and nurses in the NHS. What I do not understand, however, is why some universities are trying to entice many of their students to defer taking up their places with offers of £10,000 plus accommodation fees paid for during their first year if they chose to delay pursuing their medical courses. What on earth is going on? Don't we desperately need more doctors and nurses? Why don't these universities simply increase their teaching capacity to accommodate these medical students? If anyone knows the answers to any of these questions, I'd be very interested to know what they might be.
M. Martin from Ryde writes, explanation needed. With reference to the Westridge Farm planning approval last month, could Councillor Jeff Brodie explain why Westridge Farm is not sustainable as a farm or green land which conforms to all the current and future needs of the growing green economy, while covering it with concrete and housing plus cars, high energy and water usage, more sewage disposal and surface water runoff, polluted air, congested roads, and with housing state development recognised as having one of the highest carbon footprints currently available.
From Mary Vine in Ryde. Words fail me over columnist Malcolm's views. Does Malcolm Mime think of anyone else except himself? I happily read the first half of Mime's opinion column in the county press of the 13th of August and online, mentally congratulating him for bringing his readership down to earth after the intoxicating start to resuming something like normal life. He appeared to be explaining that we shouldn't get carried away, and wishful thinking doesn't change the reality that we remain at risk from COVID-19, some more than others, especially from those around us who have chosen not to be vaccinated, and that even when vaccinated ourselves, we remain susceptible to catching a more moderate but still somewhat debilitating form of the virus, a breakthrough infection, even if not needing to be hospitalised. But not a bit of it. He goes on to tell us that he's confident he would have been untroubled by catching the virus from his friends, and that he doesn't believe in masks. I can assure him they exist. If he caught the infection and experienced it only mildly as a breakthrough, what if he passed it on to his mother, who might have experienced it very differently? Mime then goes on to reassure us that the current floating bridge can be got rid of because he has a car and can easily drive the long way to the other side. Words fail me at this point.
The next letter is from John Baldry in Ventnor. We should expect more from our former PMs. I wonder how many people saw Panorama on August the 9th. It was fascinating. It showed Lex Greensill drawing $40 million from his bank just prior to it going bust, with many millions more going into a family trust. This at a time when his investors were losing billions of dollars. His bank was shown to be run on very flimsy ethical grounds, i.e. potentially illegal. He employed David Cameron on a salary of $1 million per year for a part-time job. Mr. Cameron states that he did not know that Mr. Greensill was running a dodgy operation and that he lobbied Parliament in good faith. If you or I had been offered $1 million per annum for a part-time job, would we not have automatically thought that something was very amiss and that we may be asked to skate on thin ice? Due to Mr. Cameron's lobbying, the British government may now have to pay £320 million in loan guarantees. This is a classic case of capitalism being exploited when profits are privatised and losses are nationalised. An interesting question would also be, where has Mr. Cameron deposited this money? Is it offshore? He was so scathing about people who did that when the Panama scandal broke, when he was Prime Minister. Also, he would be morally obliged to reimburse the government the $320 million out of his $10 million estimated gains from Greensill. That would go a little way to properly funding social care and the NHS, which is what is required for us UK citizens to live decent and healthy lives. Surely we should expect more from our ex-Prime Ministers.
And the name and address of the person giving this letter was withheld. And it's called Toilet Madness. As a resident of Shanklin, I think the Town Council should be ashamed of itself regarding the condition of the toilets adjacent to Shanklin Chine. At the moment, only 4 toilet cubicles are being used by males and females. This is most unpleasant for the ladies, as on many occasions the gentlemen have performed on the stainless steel toilet seats, and ladies of a certain age find it very difficult to hover above the wet seat. I understand the council are trying to find a solution to the problems. There are 42 beach huts adjacent to these toilets, during the season each with 3 or 4 residents, often more. In addition, there are cafes, all without toilet facilities. The beach has also been packed recently. The facilities at the middle set of toilets on the esplanade have been shut this year, and this can necessitate a very long walk. The proposals mentioned have included the suggestion of a charge for the use of the toilets, which is absurd in this tourist environment. It beggars belief that the Chine facilities cannot be gutted and refurbished at a more reasonable cost than starting from scratch. Putting shower facilities in will ensure that users will spend many minutes in the facility, and surely an outside tap to wash feet is all that is required. Each sex requires several toilets in the building rather than just a few to meet the heavy demand all year round. The council should be supporting tourism, not leaving their heads in the sand as would appear currently the case.
Gemma Blackwell Binstead writes, appointments query. I wonder when islanders will be able to visit their GP practices and make an appointment to see their doctor face to face, or are GPs still furloughing?
And this is from B. Wilshire, Totland. Strange logic that defines policies on vulnerable. Why all the need for spin and hypocrisy? Can't the British people simply acknowledge the pragmatic approach our government has taken and continues to take throughout the pandemic? The vulnerability of our elderly in care homes was foreseen way back in 2016 with exercise Cygnus, along with the need to secure robust supply lines for PPE. Our government simply chose a different path, one which sacrificed our elderly to relieve pressure on the NHS. As for the health and well-being of low-paid, largely immigrant care workers, they were seen as replaceable collateral damage and a convenient group to blame for rising care home infections. To quell any discontent, the narrative of throwing a protective arm around care homes was hurriedly spun, which the majority of the public either believe or don't really care about one way or another. But the gaming doesn't stop there. The British Medical Journal recently reported an estimated 4.7 million people are awaiting NHS treatment. We are also told the NHS is grossly understaffed and desperately needs more doctors and nurses. Yet universities are offering medical students £10,000 not to take up their courses places and defer for 1 year. So what on earth is going on? The answer is simple. NHS waiting lists for treatment are merely a transitory problem that will self-right itself with time. The longer people wait for treatment, the more people will die while waiting for treatment before receiving it. The problem of excessive NHS waiting lists will diminish long before those training to become doctors and nurses ever graduate from university. As time progresses, ministers will no doubt bask in the glory of waiting lists coming down, with the expectation a grateful public will re-elect them. It makes one proud to be British and have voted Conservative.
Kathy Fawkes from Ryde writes, tunnel vision over Ryde's public toilets. The letter, County Press, 13th of August 1921, from Transport Portfolio holder Councillor Philip Jordan, suggested a random connection between a tunnel and the current campaign that delivered 1,731 responses to the Isle of Wight Council consultation on Ryde interchange aimed at saving the Esplanade from a proposed new highway to the pier. There is no hidden agenda. It's plain madness to increase the amount of highway in a biosphere conservation seafront location that depends on tourism and group travel in a post-COVID world where the use of public toilets has doubled. Phil's team should learn from this mistake and move forward with dignity in support of their electorate. They would do well to read the government white paper on public conveniences to help them understand my agenda is merely about being civilised. The Victorians built public toilets partly in response to urbanised area problems with on-street urination, and I am prompted by concerns that lack of, quote, places to go will hinder our use of the seafront, affect tourism, a major income generator, and restrict many people from celebrating the many occasions held on the Esplanade. It is deeply concerning that at a time when public health policy encourages outdoor exercise, partly to reduce obesity and to keep our increasingly elderly population fit and engaged with the community, this proposal will encourage more people to stay indoors. The unevidenced Ryde station toilets would be inconveniently located for everyone except travellers. We know this station-based provision is in response to legislation to improve disabled access, but elsewhere it also has actually had the unfortunate consequence of several public conveniences being replaced by just one disabled access toilet. Please, Phil, stop taking the P** and change your tunnel vision. Look at the fourth alternative design given to the Isle of Wight Council, which accommodates enough bus stops on Ryde seafront, then allowing you to save face, save people's dignity and save the Western Gardens.
From David Morse in Shanklin, moral change. When a newly qualified nurse would have to work for 1,044 years to earn what an ageing and past his best footballer can earn in 12 months, is it time we considered whether there is a moral imperative for a change in our market-driven capitalist system?
And Bob Blizzard from Sandown writes, poor decisions can come back to bite you in politics. I have noted a recent exchange of letters, one purportedly written by a councillor on Lake and Shanklin councils, and the response on behalf of the Alliance administration at County Hall by Councillor Bacon. The exchange is in respect of the Welcome Back Fund money received from the government, in particular the use of that money to inspect and report maintenance issues in public conveniences. While the complaints were adequately addressed by Councillor Bacon, there is one glaring misrepresentation in the letter of complaint which must be corrected. It is claimed that the abolition of the business rates on public conveniences was achieved by, quote, much lobbying by individuals to central government. This is incorrect. The lobbying campaign was led by the National Association of Local Councils, supported by county associations across the country, including IWALC, which represents around 80% of the town, parish and community councils on the island. I lobbied Bob Seeley in Portcullis House as part of the NALC's National Lobby Day on March the 10th, 2018, and NALC's senior managers continued to engage with civil servants and ministers to press the case for business rate abolition on public conveniences. This was followed by Rishi Sunak, then local government minister, attending the NALC annual conference and confirming that the government was taking forward the necessary legislation. It would perhaps have been understandable if the complainant's letter had been written by a disaffected member of the former Conservative administration voted out of power in May. It is, however, strange that the complaint is by a member of the island's independent network when two of his party colleagues are part of the Alliance administration he is now complaining about. This demonstrates that if parties and political groups are less than careful in their candidate selection procedures, it can come back to bite them, something I learned over a decade ago.
From P. Jeffreys in Lake, unkempt roads embarrassing. With regard to the letter from Janet Appel of Cowes about the unkempt state of her road in the county press on the 23rd of July. I live on Cliff Road Lake. This road joins two parts of the cliff path between Sandown and Shanklin, so is a very busy area for tourists. I am disgusted with the state of the road. Grass growing along the gutters and hedges, which are hanging over the road by at least a couple of feet, with brambles sticking out even further, very dangerous for young children and dogs. I don't know how our councils view the island, definitely not as a tourist destination. It's time they started spending money on things needed.
This letter's from Tony Toller from Totland. I am a convert... Stop. This letter is from Tony Toller from Totland. I am a convert to Fixed Link. Cliff Bennett, County Press Letters Online and the 30th of July 1921, misses the point when comparing Wight Link with institutions such as big supermarkets, oil companies, banks, etc., because we have the freedom to choose whether we give such businesses our valuable custom. With the ferry monopoly, we have no choice. If we want to travel to the mainland, when it's either Red Funnel or Wight Link, these businesses are operated for the benefit of shareholders, not islanders. Try booking a one-way crossing with a car at the moment and you'll be unlikely to find anything under £100. The current situation really impacted on me when I needed to travel to London urgently. The only ferry available was at midnight from Fishbourne, which got me to the capital around 1:40 a.m. I have been opposed to a fixed link, but the COVID situation, combined with the mechanical problems on the ferries, has highlighted how vulnerable we are to such issues. The way forward is to put a fixed link out to private tender. Whoever wins would gain the right to charge, say, £30 per crossing per car, with adjustments for caravans, motorhomes and commercial traffic for a period of 20 years, after which the ownership and fees would revert to the Isle of Wight Council. Such a link could include an unmanned railway, providing frequent and reliable crossings for foot passengers. Such a link would enable us to travel to the mainland unhindered by weather, staffing or mechanical issues 24/7. It would prove invaluable to many islanders who have to travel to hospital for cancer treatments not available at St Mary's, and this is an time-consuming and costly exercise. I would suggest it would also help reduce shop prices for islanders. While queuing for a ferry, I noticed 2 supermarket lorries waited well over an hour to board, which combined with the crossing time meant probably 2 hours wasted in total. That's a huge cost, which I have no doubt is passed on to the island shoppers.
And now for some Wight memories. Rocket Man reflects on island adventures. Newport-born former Highdown rocket technician Lionel Bassett has celebrated his 90th birthday with family and friends in Perth, Western Australia. Mr. Bassett was joined by his twin sons Richard and John, both 53, at the celebration at the Secret Harbour Golf Club, 40 kilometres south of Perth, last month. His eldest son, Craig, 59, still lives in the United Kingdom. Mr. Bassett was born on July the 16th, 1931. After leaving 9 years of service with the Royal Navy, which he joined a month shy of his 16th birthday in 1947, a chance interview at Saunders Roe Aircraft in East Cowes led him to join those who built, tested and flew Black Knight, Blue Streak and Black Arrow rockets that took Britain into the post-war space race from the late 1950s to 1970s. The last Black Arrow lifted the British Prospero satellite in space from the Woomera rocket range in South Australia on October the 28th, 1971, just weeks after the project was cancelled in Whitehall defence cuts. Everyone on the project was disappointed they decided that as we had worked on it for 4 years and had been at the island's test site at Highdown for 11 years. But we managed to launch our own satellite on our own vehicle, and that made us proud, Mr. Bassett said from his retirement home in Perth. The rockets were assembled at Saunders Roe, now Venture Keys, before being tested at Highdown at the island's far west tip next to the Needles. They were flown from Bembridge Airport for a sometimes 2-week trip to be launched deep in the Australian outback, north of Adelaide. Everything up at Highdown was a replica of what was out at Woomera, so we could practice launches. But when we did, we would have to tell the Needles lighthouse keepers to get their permission, Mr. Bassett said. The rocket motor's exhausts would spill down the natural bowl of the site and over the sheer white chalk cliffs into nearby Scratchell's Bay. No one knew anything about what we were doing because it was such new technology, new equipment at the time, and there was such a small group of us. In the Royal Navy, Mr. Bassett was a telegraphist, petty officer, in the home fleet, Far East and ashore at radio relay station in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka. I didn't fancy the Army or the Air Force because my dad Frank was in both before and during the war, and the Navy was the best choice because it moved around the world, Mr. Bassett said.
While firing rockets, he also refereed many Isle of Wight Football Association games after qualifying while in Ceylon. He was on leave from the Navy playing football for Seaclose Park-based Barton Football Club when the game he still loves left a lifelong mark in the early 1950s. I had a collision with another player in a match against Ryde Football Club, and I can still remember well because my teammate Vic Sheath saying, "It's gone," and I had broken my nose, Mr. Bassett said. In 1974, he was able to take his family to Woomera for another rocket project for 2 years. But after returning to the island, they migrated to Sydney to escape Britain's economic downturn of the early 1980s, before shifting to the city of Perth on the west coast of the continent. They were moves Mr. Bassett has not regretted. It's been great to experience Australia and to have a lifestyle where you can have freedom and opportunity and to travel the country to see what everyone has been talking about, he said. The island is still the home of his sisters, Sue and Marion. It is the resting place of his eldest sister Pat and her husband, long-serving County Councillor Keith Lacey, while his younger brother Den, who played for Parkhurst Football Club before emigrating to Australia, recently passed away in Sydney. Despite many years away, apart from a summer back with siblings in the 1990s, the island still holds a special place for Mr. Bassett. It's because I was born and grew up there, and like many islanders living across the world, believe they were lucky to have had a life there too, he said.
And now we have My View from Jim Gibbons. Reflections on the BBC and paying for a licence. The BBC is in a pretty pickle. Many pensioners are talking of going to jail rather than buy a licence, and because many other pensioners have bought one, the BBC has to refund those that have paid or pursue those who have not. It is anyway a very strange animal. It claims to be independent, though its head is appointed by politicians. It was started and run in its early years by a man who demanded high standards of personal life from his underlings, though his own hands far from clean. Lord Reith was also a great admirer of Mussolini and Hitler. After Germany invaded Czechoslovakia, he wrote in his diary, "Hitler continues his magnificent efficiency. And after the night of the long knives, I really admire the way Hitler has cleaned up." The BBC is financed by a flat sum licence fee, regardless of the viewer's wealth, income, or how much television he watches, a sort of poll tax on stilts. The reason for this is that they do not wish to give the viewers what they want to see, but what the corporation thinks is good for them. Most of us would be willing to pay a fee for each hour that we watch BBC output, but they have consistently set their face against pay per view or selling advertising space, though they are happy to advertise their own programmes at great length. The viewers who prefer the present setup are those favoured by it, especially sports fanatics. Oops, there goes half my readership, including the editor. The corporation is utterly obsessed by sports and cheerfully cancels any listed programme if a football match, for instance, overruns, to the great annoyance of a viewer who has noticed in the listings a gem among the dross.
An essential part of their remit is to, quote, inform and provide impartial news, but the newsreaders show pretty clearly what they think of the news as they give it. Most of us well remember the appalled mien of those who gave the results of the Brexit referendum when they realised that the result was not 52% against Brexit and 48% for, as had been forecast by the pollsters, but the reverse. their ashen faces gave the game away. I believe they would have worn black ties and mourning armbands if they'd had enough time to arrange it. The BBC views on any subjects are pretty well close to those of the Islington intelligentsia and the Sir Humphreys of the mandarins of the civil service. For instance, anyone rash enough to suggest that climate change was not solely caused by mankind was quickly silenced. In my last column, I asked who accused us all of having 60 religions and only one source. Well, I thought it was Napoleon, but it turns out to be Caracciolo, a Neapolitan diplomat. Now, who was it who claimed, "I am worth 1000 BC journalists"?
The real rock stars of island history. Many older buildings on the island are built with island stone. In the north of the island, this is Bembridge limestone. Much of this stone was exported to the mainland. The harder type, called Quar stone, quarried around Quar and Binstead, was used by the Romans in the building of Porchester Castle. Later it was used in Chichester and Winchester cathedrals. Export of stone by water was easier than by road. Upper green sandstone is also to be seen in island buildings, generally to the south of the island. Several quarries were dug at Bonchurch and Ventnor. Before the 16th century, stone was mainly used in special buildings such as churches and Carisbrooke Castle. Bonchurch Old Church is an example of this, and the newer Victorian church at Bonchurch was constructed on the site of one of the stone quarries. During the 17th century, manor houses, farmhouses, and larger cottages were also being built of stone, as landowners preferred the durability of stone. It was also widely available, with small quarries being used nearby. Often the stone was not laid in courses, but just randomly as the shape of the stone permitted. 2 rows of stone would be constructed to make a single wall, and the centre filled with rubble. A lime mortar would be used to stick the outer stones together. Limestone or chalk would be burnt in a kiln, and then the resulting powder was added to sand to make the mortar. Lime kilns were often located within easy reach of water at the head of a creek or near to the source of the limestone. A typical kiln was circular, 3 to 4 metres in height, and built of sandstone. Brushwood at the base below a grid was fired, igniting layers of poor coal and limestone that had been loaded from above. Today, repair of stone walls is an art. Lime mortar allows the stone to breathe, whereas cement mortar holds damp in and causes the stonework to crumble. In listed buildings, the mortar must be analysed to find a matching mixture, and sometimes it is found to have particular grit or chalk nodules added. New stone walling today can look magnificent where it matches an existing older wall, such as at Millfield, Queen's Road in Ryde. Repairs to old stone walls, such as at Bonchurch Old Church or Berwick Lodge, Ryde, can take much time, but the effort to conserve our island heritage is to be applauded, as it will be at our forthcoming Isle of Wight Conservation Awards.
And now some information on what's on the Isle of Wight. What's on Wight? On Sunday, there's music, Country Comfort at Ventnor Park Bandstand in Ventnor at 2 p.m. Laurie McVeigh and the High Rollers at the Hideaway in Shanklin at 3 p.m. Coldplay, a tribute to Coldplay, is at Shanklin Theatre in Shanklin at 7:30 p.m. That's a ticketed event. Happy Days Festival featuring Dick Taylor, Andy Roberts, General Levi and more is at the Winter Gardens in Ventnor. Music starts at 12 p.m. and that's also a ticketed event. Last Wight at the Proms, featuring Joanna Forrest and more. Northwood House Cows at 3:15 p.m. and again that's a ticketed event. And on Wednesday there's Cloudbusting, the music of Kate Bush at the Shanklin Theatre at 7:30, also a ticketed event.
And now we have some more items from the county press. Objections to Newport Cafe. Residents of central Newport are objecting to a new bar planned for the former Pizza Express site. Now the plans for Wild on the junction of Town Lane and Pyle Street will go before the Isle of Wight Council's licensing subcommittee after neighbours complained it was not suitable for a residential area. One neighbour said, "We are not killjoys and we were young once, but these hours are surely not suitable with so many residents in the flats. Quite frankly, we are worried sick." Wild has submitted a new premises licence application for a restaurant, cafe, bar, but its initial plans have been modified following residents' feedback. Signs on the building on Pyle Street say it will be the sassiest and most Instagrammable cafe, opening in September. In licensing documents, applicants Wild Bars says its target customer is a young, working female professional who loves to eat, drink and socialise with friends while using social media to publish moments of their day-to-day life. The former pizza restaurant is currently undergoing an extensive refurbishment. It will create 30 new jobs. Wild Bars say, as well as making the town centre more appealing to young people. Wild is asking to play films, live and recorded music, as well as host dance performances. It has asked to provide entertainment and alcohol from 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday to Saturday and 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Sundays. 30 minutes extra recorded music and drinking up time is being sought. Residents in the flats above and in Savoy Court opposite are unhappy. One resident said even though they had received a leaflet from Wild saying how it would limit the noise, the real nuisance came from outside with smokers or when people left the venue. They said a level of nighttime disturbance is expected living in the town centre, but the granting of this licence has real potential to accelerate this a level far beyond what is acceptable. However, in a response to the comments, Wild said the operating hours have been carefully crafted to ensure a gradual dispersal of patrons, and despite the licensing hours, it is proposed to close at 11 p.m. Sunday to Thursday and midnight on Friday and Saturday. Environmental health officials said the prevention of public nuisance may be compromised by the activities and have objected until a second set of doors are installed. Wild is intending to do the work, but it cannot be done immediately. In the licensing report, council officers reminded the committee individuals are responsible for their own behaviour once they leave the immediate vicinity. It has been recommended the licence be granted, subject to any additional modifications or conditions. The committee will meet on Thursday.
Only 16 stars surprise 80th birthday. Friday the 13th turned out to be a lucky day for the Isle of Wight's former pop star Craig Douglas. He celebrated his 80th birthday at a surprise party. It was the correct day too. The previous day, some national publications and social media had wrongly claimed it was August the 12th. Craig, who was born Terry Perkins in Newport, won a 1957 talent contest and the following year changed his name and left the island to become one of the most successful pop stars in Britain. Recently, he's returned home after being forced to give up his career due to ill health. He was completely surprised by his afternoon tea party, which was held at the Royal Esplanade Hotel in Ryde, courtesy of its owner, Michael Strickland. It had been arranged by his long-term friend, local showbiz journalist and broadcaster John Hannon. Craig was cheered in to the sound of his 1959 number one hit single, Only 16. He was thrilled to meet Old Barton and Priory boys, school pals like Brian Knight and Mike Blackman. Several local musicians who had worked with him were present, including Simon Spurr, Lewis Barry, Alan Nichols and Brian Sharp. Fellow entertainers Pat Reeder and Crisco and local show promoters Vic Farrow and Vic King were there too. In a relaxed conversation, John coaxed Craig to reveal his career highlights. These included being backed by the Beatles at the Liverpool Empire just before they broke into the big time. He walked into their dressing room and heard them singing his songs. He talked about his worldwide success, meeting Nat King Cole and being invited to movie star William Holder's ranch in Kenya. Then there were revelations about his dating two Miss Worlds. An emotional Craig said, "This is a wonderful occasion, and I know so many people here. It's brought back so many memories." He hopes to move back to his home in Newport in a few weeks' time.
Baywatch heroes. Meet the teenagers who rescued mum and son from the sea. A mother and son owe their lives to a trio of young beach lifeguards after being pulled from the water in Sandown. The pair, weak swimmers who had been walking along a concrete groin on Tuesday, fell into the sea unexpectedly and found themselves out of their depth. And while it's been a quieter summer than most for Todd Miller and his team of Ryde Beach lifeguards, their contribution on the evening showed their importance. A doctor was on holiday, stepped in to assist, and the pair were taken to St Mary's Hospital for treatment. The beach lifeguards had been alerted to two bathers struggling near iSurf, and head lifeguard Jacob Jenner immediately responded with a rescue board. He was accompanied by 16-year-old Joe Carter, who was carrying a first response bag, and greeted his colleague and the casualties at the shore. Joe Caddick, also 16, liaised with Coast Guard teams and called the ambulance service. The boy had swallowed water and was at risk of suffering from secondary drowning, a condition which can lead to death. Jacob and Joe Carter, together with Bembridge Coast Guard rescue team members, provided aftercare. They waited until the ambulance arrived. Ryde Beach lifeguard manager Todd said both the boy and his mother were suffering from shock and shaken up by the ordeal. Jacob is an A-level student in his third season with RBL. He learnt to swim at Waterside Pool and later became a club swimmer at Ryde Swimming Club. If we weren't on duty, the casualties wouldn't have received the professional and knowledgeable service from us, and the consequences could have been life-threatening, said Jacob. Joe Carter had just turned 16 when he completed his pre-season training earlier this year. Lifeguarding is his first job, and he also learnt to swim at Waterside, progressing to become an international standard competitive swimmer. Joe Caddick and his family are always in and around water, surfing, kayaking and the like. His older sister Annie was a beach lifeguard for RBL last year. Beach lifeguarding is his first job and he's working in an environment he loves. Joe said, "We were able to quickly take control of the situation and ensure the casualties received the most appropriate aftercare. The Coast Guard were really helpful and prompt in assisting us, so we would like to thank them for their invaluable help. RBL is really proud to have a presence at Sandown again," said Todd.
All aboard for Floating Dining by Louise Hill. Plans for a luxury floating restaurant aboard a 34-metre fully furbished yacht have been unfurled. A licensing application has been submitted by the Freehold Group for a new floating bar and restaurant, The Boat, at East Cowes. According to its social media, the vessel, which has 3 decks, is in the process of being refurbished. Its social media channels say it's coming to East Cowes in the summer of 2021, with the application asking to be opened as soon as possible. The company said it drew inspiration from the Grand Banks, an oyster bar on the Hudson River in New York, and will be the Solent's first sailing restaurant. The application looks to allow live and recorded music and the supply of alcohol on the boat from 11 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, with late night refreshments provided from 11 p.m. It would be based at a berth at Venture Quays, close to the Columbine buildings in East Cowes, which the Isle of Wight Council now owns. The authority purchased Venture Quays along with other buildings and plots of lands around it in September last year. In recent months, the council has announced that it has submitted a £7 million bid to government as part of the Levelling Up Fund to improve the East Cowes waterfront area, bringing more jobs and visitors. The council has said it's working on refreshing the previous master plan for the area, having discussions with local stakeholders on key issues and opportunities for the town. It was the authority's intention, a spokesperson said, to discuss the new master plan with wider businesses and residents when a draft has been prepared.
Oscar's Garden, a Wight sight to see. Many people completed projects during COVID lockdown, but there aren't many as impressive as Oscar Stretch's garden. Oscar, 77, was shielding due to being vulnerable with ill health and got bored. He was known for his beautiful garden and huge Christmas displays when he lived at Perone Way in Sandown and raised £38,000 for charity through his winter wonderlands. Since moving to Fox's Close, his front garden is still admired, especially his bright begonias. But Oscar kept looking at his back garden with an urge to do something special. He got someone in to do the heavy landscaping and create an Isle of Wight shape, which required 11 tons of dirt and an 80-foot wall of bricks. He then took over the planting and made it look beautiful, featuring, of course, his beloved begonias. The former footballer and cricketer has struggled with illness recently, but he told the county press, "I've been in and out of hospital, but I have got so much enjoyment out of doing this project. People say my garden is out of this world, but as long as you water and feed it, it's quite easy. All I have to do now is keep it watered and fed." He has included Isle of Wight details such as a windmill at Bembridge, the Needles and the Nab Tower.
Island MP to query inaccurate COVID bed data by Laurie Little. Inaccurate data showing numbers of COVID patients at St Mary's Hospital is to be raised at government level by Island MP Bob Seeley. Data on the government website where journalists are directed to get accurate numbers from has been wrong all week. Last Friday, it showed a 7-fold jump from 5 to 36 COVID patients at St Mary's as of Tuesday, August the 10th. However, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust said this was wrong and there were only 5 COVID patients. However, the figure has remained online on the publicly available website ever since. Mr Seeley told the county press, "I will be contacting government as it's important that we get accurate data." This has clearly been a slip-up in an otherwise strong system of communication, but it's important to be as transparent and open as possible. The county press and other media rely on this data and it needs to be accurate so that they can do their job properly and inform people of the facts. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust said there were 5 COVID positive patients in the hospital on August the 9th and 10th, which fell to just 1 last Friday. However, there are now 9 as of yesterday, Thursday. The island's COVID rolling rate has now risen above the UK rate. The Isle of Wight rate per 100,000 people was 374.6 on Wednesday, when the UK rate was 296. Rates of people confirmed with COVID have been high, with 100 cases added on Wednesday, 63 on Tuesday, and 69 on Monday.
Post office to close during store switch. Plans to change Freshwater's cooperative store into a Tesco will move forward this autumn with the temporary closure of the in-store post office counter. A date has yet to be announced for the month-long closure, but islanders are being assured it is not a permanent measure. The planned change of brand for the West Wight's biggest supermarket was first unveiled in June, and the swap is expected to be carried out in the autumn. Employees from the existing cooperative will also become Tesco staff under a 2p agreement. When it announced the sale of the shop, Southern Co-op said this will allow the group to focus on its convenience stores, including the store in Avenue Road, Freshwater, which will continue to serve the local community. As the move edges nearer, Tesco has told the county press, the post office will close for approximately 4 weeks while we fit out the new store. We apologise to customers for any inconvenience this may cause, and we look forward to welcoming everyone to the new store once it's ready in the autumn. A statement from the post office points islanders to 2 alternative branches while work is taking place. One is in Yarmouth's Quay Street, open 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Monday to Friday, and one is in Totland Bay, open 8:30 to 1 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Saturday.
Men bailed after baseball bat and knife fight. Men armed with a knife and a baseball were arrested following a fight outside Newport Police Station in the early hours of Tuesday. A police spokesman said at around 1:20 a.m. on Tuesdays, officers saw an altercation taking place outside Newport Police Station in High Street, Newport. A 25-year-old man from Newport was arrested on suspicion of possessing a knife, blade or sharp-pointed article in a public place and causing actual bodily harm. He has been granted conditional bail until September the 14th while officers continue their inquiries. A 34-year-old man from Newport was arrested on suspicion of possessing an offensive weapon in a public place, namely a baseball bat, and was granted bail until September the 14th while inquiries continue.
Ireland remembers. 76 years on, Isle of Wight pays tribute to Far East veterans. The 76th anniversary of VJ Day was celebrated on the island on Sunday. At St George's Church, Arreton, the service was led by priest in charge, the Reverend Cath Abbott, and the address given by the Venerable Peter Leonard, Archdeacon of the Isle of Wight. Standards representing the Burma Star Association, the Royal British Legion, New Church Cubs and Scouts, Girl Guides and Ride Sea Scouts were presented. Wreaths were laid by Harry Aitken, 99-year-old Burma Star veteran, Susie Sheldon, Lord Lieutenant of the Isle of Wight, Brigadier Maurice Sheen, Vice Lord Lieutenant of the Isle of Wight, and James Attrell, High Sheriff of the Isle of Wight. Stuart Kent played the last post and Rivale. The exhortation and Kohima epitaph were read by Brigadier Sheen. The choir from St John's Church, Newport, sang an anthem, accompanied by organist John Matthews. There were approximately 120 people in the church, and refreshments were enjoyed outside following the service. A retiring collection raised £532 for the Burma Star Association. At St Mary's Church, Bryston, the Bryston and District branch of the Royal British Legion held a memorial. Proceedings began with 2 brief stories about the war with Japan and an opening prayer by the Reverend Peter Dyson. Branch President Reg Hunt laid the RBL wreath, while Chairman John Fishman laid the VJ Day wreath. The President then gave the exhortation, and bugler Hilary Reeves, played the last post. Standard bearer Peter Atkinson lowered the standard. Following a 2-minute silence, Secretary and Treasurer John McGrory recited the Kahima epitaph.
Book prize winner. A winner has been drawn for our July book giveaway. We received a high volume of entries for a signed copy of psychological thriller The Island, courtesy of Isle of Wight-based author Mary Grant. The winner of a signed copy of the book is Karen Long from Carisbrooke. She correctly stated that Brook was the beach featured in the book.
And that's all we have time for this morning. So it's goodbye from me, from
And
Madeline.
goodbye from me, Tressa.
The In Touch programme follows. Disability strategy and employment. It may not come as a surprise to you that for many years unemployment rates amongst blind and visually impaired people have been consistently high. This is despite government efforts to combat this. Well, the recent release of 2 reports has put disability employment back on the agenda. We asked the Minister for Disabled People, Justin Tomlinson, about this government's plans, outlined within their new disability strategy, to get more blind and visually impaired people into work. And the sight loss charity, the Vision Foundation, has recently published their See My Skills report. It gives a detailed but rather bleak insight into the employment landscape for blind and visually impaired people. We speak to 2 people with direct experience of seeking work. The charity's Chief Executive, Olivia Curnow, and previous Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and now Vice Chair of the Vision Foundation, Lord David Blunkett, about the report and what their charity is doing to help the situation. Following In Touch, we have this week's scaffolding news.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. We hear a lot about inclusion when talking about disability these days, and surely one aspect of life that can provide the greatest sense of inclusion is having a job. Economic independence, of course, but also a sense of being of value to society and a feeling of belonging. Yet the proportion of visually impaired people of working age in a job has consistently been very low, and despite huge social changes, has hardly risen over the past 50 or 60 years. Well, 2 recent reports have put employment firmly back on the agenda. The government has produced its disability strategy, which deals with many aspects of life but has a major section on employment. And the sight loss charity, the Vision Foundation, has produced a report called See My Skills, which shows that it's still the case that only just over 1 in 4 visually impaired people of working age are in a job. Well, we'll be talking to the Vision Foundation, to visually impaired people looking for work, and to Lord Blunkett, who amongst many other things has been both Secretary of State for Employment and Work and Pensions. But first, I've been talking to the Minister for Disabled People, Justin Tomlinson. I reminded him of the government's declared aim back in 2017 of putting 1 million extra disabled people into work by 2027, and the claim that they had already added 800,000 disabled people to the workforce. And yet, the proportion of visually impaired people of working age in jobs still stood at just over 27%, compared to 51% of disabled people generally and 75% of those without disabilities. Didn't that suggest visually impaired people were being failed by the system?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud that as a government we've delivered record disability employment. And you are right, we have a firm commitment for 1 million more disabled people in work by 2027. And despite the unprecedented challenges of COVID, that ambition is no less great today as it is at any other point. And you are right to highlight that pan disability, that is our target. But within that, as you look at specific characteristics, there are further challenges. And that's why we are consulting further to see what more can be done to help on recruitment, retention, and also career progression. So there's three different important strands. Now, in some cases, it is about focusing the minds of employers, who we have seen in recent years have continued to increase the numbers of pan-disabled people. But what more can be done in that areas? How better can we use technology? How better can we promote our Access to Work scheme? And later on this year, we will be actually testing Access to Work passports, where we will be targeting different groups of disabled people ahead of needing to use Access to Work, so they are aware. We can fill in as much of the information as possible, and therefore we can see whether that will help increase the numbers benefiting from that scheme, which also currently has record numbers using it.
But the fact of the matter is that although your numbers have gone up on disability generally, they've not gone up on visual impairment, which suggests that whatever methods you're using, they're not working.
Well, we need to work harder with employers. We will also be piloting further around disability reporting for employers, initially of larger employers, but again, looking to see what lessons can be learned from that and then brought forward. 1 in 5 people in this country have a disability or a long-term health condition, of which the vast majority will get that during their working age. And we lose around 300,000 people a year from the workplace because of a disability or changing health condition. So we need to get much better at supporting employers to make sure that we aren't losing so many people from the workplace.
2 more figures from that Vision Foundation report. 23% of employers said they wouldn't make adaptations to employ a visually impaired person. 90% said they'd find it very hard to employ blind or partially sighted people in their companies. What can you do about that?
Well, first of all, I'm disappointed at that first figure because employers, and I say this as somebody who has employed disabled people, with the right support and confidence, employers can benefit from that huge wealth of talent that is available, particularly filling in. I often talk to businesses saying they're struggling to fill their skills gaps. So they just need to have that confidence to make reasonable adjustments. That second figure, I think that's a fair challenge. And that highlights exactly why we've got to improve awareness of the Access to Work scheme, of the various support and guidance that is available, not just around recruitment, but about the retention and then ultimately the career progression. We've all collectively got to do better in this area if we are going to move those figures up.
I still don't think you've told me why that visual impairment figure is so stubbornly low and fixed, and I want to make a suggestion to you why it might be. One thing that seems to have happened over the years is that we've lost people in the jobs business, including government people, who specialise in visual impairment. There used to be people known as blind persons resettlement officers whose sole job was to get blind and partially sighted people into work. Are we making a mistake by so often talking about disability generally, which is what you've been doing, when often they're very different things? Sensory disability, physical disability, learning disability, psychiatric disability. They're 4 very different things, aren't they?
You're absolutely right. And this is very much why, if you look at the National Disability Strategy, Chapter 2 is dedicated to improving the data and the evidence that we have to be able to create more personalised, more tailored responses, because the range of both challenges and opportunities is very diverse as you look disability. So you're absolutely right, and we agree with you, but there isn't, as it stands, sufficient data always for us to be able to scale up what is the right support that is done. So 1, we're going to get more data. 2, we're making sure those with real lived experience are at the heart of the policy development as we go forward. As we set these ambitious targets around disability employment, we know that we've all got to collectively do more, and to do that we have to work together.
That's the Minister for Disabled People, Justin Tomlinson. Well, listening to that are 2 people with direct experiences of looking for work and trying to get appropriate adaptations when they're in work. Kripali Parshottam, you're a qualified science teacher. What kind of assumptions are made about you? When you've had placements and had jobs, what is it that people assume that perhaps make you feel uncomfortable?
I think it's just maybe their fear of asking questions that they should just ask. I know I've been in interviews where I know they want to ask me questions like, how would you manage 30 kids when you don't see their faces? How would you know a child is misbehaving when you don't know? Even though there is a small part of the interview process where I do have to do a lesson, but I've made it quite clear that I need a support worker within the lesson to provide me with visual cues. So just to tell me where the kids are at, what they're doing.
So you would rather they ask those tough questions. You want to be asked those questions, and you say they're sort of shying away from asking them.
Yeah, if I'm going to be working in that school, I'm going to be part of their team, a part of the science team and part of the whole school community. And it's best if they just straight up and just ask me what they need to ask me. So I have had some interviews where they've gone quite well and they've understood what my needs are. Whereas in some situations, you can tell there's some hesitancy or it doesn't meet the ethos of the school or it doesn't meet how things are run. I guess some schools are strict on how they want things to be. So I think people just need to be educated a bit more. I guess employers need to know a bit more about disabilities, know about the technology people use, how they work, how they learn to adapt things on a day-to-day basis. I think it's just the lack of knowing and understanding. And I guess from my perspective, from a school, you're going to have a variety of students with a variety of disabilities or additional needs. And if you're not prepared within the school environment to deal with your students, then it makes you wonder how they're going to be prepared for someone who's a member of staff.
Right, let me bring in Amelia Okoye. I understand you're currently in employment and your problem is more when you've asked for adaptations which would help you do the job. I mean, give me some examples of the kind of things that you've had problems with.
I've had a situation where I've needed reasonable adjustments to be made whilst I was actually working for an organisation. I was in the office and I was also working on reception. So in the office, my computer screen was very large. It was adapted. But because I was also on reception duties as well, I needed the computer monitor to be big. But my manager said no, because we have to think of everybody else. It's not just me who's going to be at reception. My colleague will be there as well. So we have to think of them. And then I struggled to do my job because those adaptations wasn't put in place. So I didn't struggle because I couldn't do the job. I struggled because how can I see what I'm doing when you're not putting the adaptations in place? She made it seem as if I was being a nuisance. At that time, it really affected my confidence. It really made me feel very low, like maybe there's a problem with me. Maybe I just thought I was the problem. It feels like at times where you tell them that you have a visual impairment, they're fine with it. But then when it gets to doing assessments or when it gets to doing the training, it then becomes a whole lot of problems. They don't want to make those adjustments. They think that, visual impairment people, that everybody has the same issue. So if I've supported one person like this, everybody else should be supported like this.
Amelia, thank you very much indeed. Let me bring in Olivia Curnow, who's the Chief Executive of the Vision Foundation, which published the See My Skills report. Now, we've already heard a number of your report's findings, and I'd put them to the Minister. What do you regard as its most important conclusions?
There are a number, and I think a huge part of this comes down to public perception and employer perception. That statistic, the 90% of employers think it would be difficult or impossible to employ blind or partially sighted people, was so shocking to us. So that 90% is critical, and it echoes a different statistic from the Vision Foundation. We surveyed 2,000 working members of the public, and in that survey, 94% of respondents said that a blind person could not do their job. So across the general public, there is an assumption about what people can and can't do, rather than a reality. So there's a gap between people's perception and the reality. And I think we as a sector but also government, if it wants to make a real difference here, has to start by addressing that perception. Then some really basic structural barriers. So access to work, as the Minister acknowledged, it's cumbersome, it's very slow. You need to have a pretty committed and understanding employer to wait the 2 or 3 months before it kicks in. And until very recently, and still for many people, you can't access to work claims and provision without cited support, which is laughably ironic, really. So we know that there are, around 450,000 working age people who are visually impaired, but we know that only 5,000 received support from Access to Work last year. And just, reflecting back on the Minister's own statistics, 7 million disabled people in the UK of working age, and only 35,000 claimed Access to Work support. That's 0.5%. So it's a very best kept secret. It really needs to be out there, and employers just don't realise that all of those adjustments will be fully funded. So off the back of our report, we've launched a fund. So we've launched a funding pot for projects which address perception but also deliver specific support services for individuals on their journey. We're also launching a digital campaign called #SeeMySkills. The report is called See My Skills in October, which is all about a digital approach to affecting employer perception. And we're also delivering webinars to HR professionals. What's been heartening about the response we've had since launching the See My Skills report is how many companies have actually reached out to us saying we want to get better, we want to do better.
Olivia Curnow, thank you very much indeed, and also our thanks to Amelia and Kripali. Well, listening to all of that has been Lord Blunkett, who, as well as being the current Vice President of the Vision Foundation, has been both Secretary of State for Employment and for Work and Pensions. David, that was quite a long time ago, and yet it sounds as if not much has changed.
I found that both depressing and challenging. It takes a lot these days to shake me, but I was shaken by those statistics, the 90% and the 94% of employers and the general public, and their attitudinal failure to understand and to be able to give people the chance to prove what they know they can do. I've often said this to you, Peter, that I wouldn't try and become a bus driver or an airline pilot, and it's a great relief to most people listening. But I do know what I can do, and that's true of all blind people. We are aware of, within our own ambitions, what we can achieve, and we should be given the clear opportunity and the support to be able to do it.
There's a lot of blame there for employers, and yet aren't we expecting them to know things that it appears very few of the public understand? I.e. the range of things that blind people can do. People don't get it, so why should employers be any different?
I think to change those attitudes, we need the kind of examples that you've had on your programme. I think to bring about change in the way that the Vision Foundation are describing, firstly, we need all the organisations that are of and representing blind and partially sighted people to join together. So there's a joined up campaign. Secondly, we need to ensure that really good examples, and you've had them on your programme, but there are so many blind and partially sighted people who are doing fantastic things out there. And we need to get those up in light so that people can actually see that it can be done. My disappointment is that I thought, until I read the Vision Foundation report, that I might have had some impact myself by being a very high profile blind person in jobs which, by any standards, were challenging. It's pretty clear that individual examples, such as my own, don't really cut it. So we've got to have a much more sophisticated approach to getting those messages across, not just nationally, but at every local level as well.
But why is it so hard for governments to do it? And I'm not just making the point at the present government, because, of course, your own party was in power for 13 years. These figures have stayed the same for the last 50.
Yes, it's 16 years since I was at Work and Pensions. So when I entered the department, there was a proposal to actually cut, would you believe, access to work, which I obviously reversed immediately. I thought that access to work, what are now called job coaches, And a lot of money's been put in because of COVID into job coaches and enabling them to specialise and therefore to advocate access to work and to make it much more flexible and personalised would actually make a difference. And I still believe that. I think that the money that the government put into the DWP on the back of the COVID crisis could be used creatively by specialising. And that was a point that really came out in the programme this evening, that it's no good just talking about disability in the round. Included in that 7 million figure are people who have long-term health challenges that are not specifically a defined disability. When people have a job, it's really critical to help them to hold on to it rather than losing it at a time when maybe their sight decreases and they can't manage in the way that they had previously. So that and progression within work, so that once you've got a job, you're given the opportunity to break that glass ceiling and to actually be able to progress is really important.
Lord Blunkett, thank you very much indeed. That's it for today. Of course, we want your views and experiences of work and visual impairment. We also still want your questions for Ofcom about the current provisions of audio description. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. You can go to our website at bbc.co.uk/in touch, where you can download tonight's and previous editions of the programme. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers Mike Smith and Jonathan Esp, goodbye.
Scaffolding and skips news for the week commencing the 23rd of August. In the Ventnor area, there's a skip outside South Bank Park Avenue. In the Ryde area, at 48 Nelson Street, 13 Esplanade, 60 Union Street, Fowler's Union Street, Jack's 75 Union Street, Brendula 5 Union Street, 146 to 147 High Street, 4 West Street, and there are skips outside 46 St John's Wood Road and 38 Weeks Road. In the Freshwater area, Royal Standard 15 School Green Road.
In the Newport area, NatWest 107 St James Square, the Old Mill, St Cross Lane, Watson Bull and Porter 31 High Street, Halifax High Street, Woodford and Son 1 St James Street, Red Squirrel Pyle Street, number 1 High Street, Ladbrokes St James Street. There's a skip outside 20 Shippards Road in Brightstone. In the Cowes area, skips outside 43 Newport Road. In the East Cowes area, 32 Castle Street. Yarmouth area, Eramew Cottage High Street. And in the Sandown area, a skip outside 32 Grove Road.